What is going on, everyone? My name's Boit, and today we're going to be doing a relic tier list. So for those of you who wanted to follow along with some text to get the effects of the relics, I'll put a link in the description below for what that looks like. It's just the Age of Empires wiki, but you'll be able to see all of the effects there. To talk you through how my tier list is sort of going to work is it's a priority list. Relics are, in general, good to pick up. Pretty much every single one of them. There are a couple of don't bothers, in my opinion, but for the most part, they're all worth grabbing. So this is really more of a priority list. So let's just go through it and see if we can get some justification behind the whole thing and explain how I think about it. Nonetheless, we've got adamantine shingles here as the first relic. This one gives your houses extra HP. I put this one in the D tier. It's worth picking up. It's not that impactful in the game. It can't really save you against any of the huge god powers like earthquakes, so you're still going to lose those to that. But say you're playing to block up your base with houses and things, this just makes that a little bit stronger. The next one here is Ankh of Ra. This gives you 0.5 favor a second. This one is kind of a C tier relic in my opinion. It's kind of one of those trickle relics. I kind of feel like most of the trickle relics are around about a C tier. But this one here is actually, it depends on the civ as to how good it is. If you're playing as Greek or as Norse, it's actually quite nice to have this because you can kind of skip out on a villager or a couple of Herso that you might not really want, but you need to get the favor income. Effectively, it's half a monument. So, you know, how much a monument can give you, gives you half of that. Can be very, very helpful, but definitely sitting in that C tier. The next one here we've got is the Anvil of Hephaestus as we get our first must-grab relic. I really like this one. It is in a similar sort of feel to the trickle relics because it's just giving you resources back, but when you get upgrades, when you get those armory upgrades. Effectively, this gives you, though, around about, 1,200 to 1,300 resources if you get all your upgrades, and that's not accounting for every single one, just like the main like weapons, armor, and shield upgrades. You get about 1,300. I can't remember exactly what it is. Someone can correct me in the comments because I'm sure it's wrong. But yeah, if you compare it over to, say, getting, what is it? I can't remember. Like any of the other trickle relics, which is something like man, my brain isn't working. It's pretty good. Let's just go along with this. When we get to the trickle relics, I'll relate it back. But I really like this one because it helps you out throughout the entirety of the game when you want it to help you out. It's like you just get those resources. The next one here is Archimedes' Ledger, and this is going to be our first don't bother relic. I just don't think it's that important. I don't think it's impactful. One population off on a siege weapon. I don't even think it's possible to really boost this without making it seem like ridiculously broken. If you go up to like 2 population for this relic, then all of a sudden it's like, wow, that's actually broken. At 1 population, what are you going to do? You're going to build like a whole bunch of ballista is kind of like the only real thing where I can see this have some sort of impact. But yeah, I don't rate this relic. I could be wrong on this, but I just, whenever I see this, I'm just like, nah. Not for me. Next one is Armor of Achilles. This is where we're getting into relics that I think are really, really good. I'm going to chuck this one up in the A tier for now. I might drop it down to B tier based on what I see going through this. But basically, any of the stat boosting relics are insane, in my opinion, because it's just a boost that your opponent is not going to be able to get. And just it really helps you out. So, for example, in a matchup of, let's just say you're playing, I don't know, Uranus mirror, or not even a mirror. Let's go with Kronos versus Gaia. Now, normally the infantry units there, it's probably going to be favoring the Gaia player because they've got Bite of the Shark, right? That's getting a fairly hefty amount of damage done. But all of a sudden you get Armor of Achilles, and those Murmillo of the Kronos player are going to be nice to use against the Murmillo of the Oceanus Bite of the Shark player. It's not going to be quite equal, but it's going to be a little bit better for you. So, and obviously, if the Gaia player were to pick it up, it'd be even more in favor of the Gaia player. So you can see how things can get sort of out of hand where that's concerned. Next one down is the Arrows of Heracles. This one, in a similar way to Armor of Achilles, this one boosts up your ranged soldiers, including ranged heroes, in terms of attack. It's only 5%, just like Armor of Achilles is only 5%. I don't think the 5% boost in damage is the difference between sort of like winning and losing a game, but I do think this is a really, really important relic because 5% boosted damage on your archers is just something you're going to be using every single game, and it's just a free boost. That's a lot of help. I don't really have anything else to say. Similar sort of reasoning for Armor of Achilles there. The next one here is Arrows of the Alpha. I think this relic is actually super underappreciated. Like, we've already got people saying that, you know, the towers aren't very strong, but this doesn't just affect towers. This affects buildings, town centers, fortresses. All of them go up by 20%. So, yeah, this is really, really good. If you want to play a defensive game. In fact, if you find this relic and say you're playing as Hades, you can almost just like slam down a bunch of fortresses and just sit back and just like not build units. It's very, very strong. If we continue moving along here, we've got Black Lotus. This is a good relic. I'd put it a step above the sort of resource trickle relics. 10% boost to farming, though. It's not the best of the... Well, it actually kind of is. It's one of the better of the economic upgrades, I think, as I'm thinking about it more. Just on the fact that farms are going to be there for the entirety of the game, and it also helps you in those situations where you're farming in the classical age. Generally speaking, I think farming in the classical age is something you want to avoid. You want to actually get to the heroic age first, and then have irrigation, and then all of a sudden, those farms start being very, very useful. But if you've only got plow, not the best. But then if you get Black Lotus plus plow, that's like you have irrigation farming in the classical age, totally fine. All right, let's keep going on the Blanket of Empress. So this one reduces buildings' crush vulnerability by 10%. I don't think this is a terrible relic. I don't think it's a good relic. I put this below Adamantine Shingles. It doesn't really give you enough of a booster resistance to keep yourself alive against any of those big god powers, like I said before, but it can help you keep those buildings alive against siege and stuff. It's worth picking up, but it's probably like the last relic you want to really go for. Next one here is a Blue Crystal Shard. This one is slightly better than the Black Lotus because it affects both wood and gold, which is 2 resources, but it's only a 5% boost. This used to be a terrible relic as a bit of a random tidbit on Legacy because it didn't really have an effect for half of the game, and some of the time it had a huge effect. So it was actually really good or really bad. But anyways, it's a straight 5%, so 10% boost to wood, to your economy overall. Same as Black Lotus, but also hitting wood and gold, and it's going to have a use for the entirety of the game. So I like the relic. It's very, very good. Okay, Bow of Artemis is next. This one reduces your archer cost as well as reducing ranged myth units like Centaur, Manticore, Medusa, Wadjet, Ptsukos, Troll, Yorm, and Elvis. Satyr, I believe, also should be on that one as well. Maybe they don't. Maybe they don't have... Maybe it's... No, it should be Satyr as well. Nonetheless, this is an economic relic. And I haven't done the math on this, so I'm just going to put this up here in a similar sort of place to Anvil of Hephaestus. I'm not sure what gets you more resources over the course of the game. Like, say we've got a 100 costed archer, right? And I take 15% off. That's 15 resources. In order to get 1,300 resources in, I need to build myself 86 of that unit, which, you know, I'm probably going to do in some games. So I don't think it's quite Anvil of Hephaestus, though, you know, some games it's going to be better than Anvil of Hephaestus, but you just don't know based on how the game's going to go. So it's definitely a must-grab relic, but I'm not sure if it's quite must-grab like Anvil of Hephaestus. It might actually be sitting at the top of A tier, so we'll see how the rest of them are going to come. The next relic here is Bridle of Pegasus. I love this relic. Let me pop this one up here. I think this relic is really, really good. If you're Greek, doesn't really matter because you can just buy one for 50 food. But for Egyptian, for Norse, for Atlantean, all of a sudden you get this ranged scout or flying scout, which has got a huge range on its line of sight. And that's invaluable. At the very top level, this is a really, really big help. And anyone who knows how to scout well is going to have a huge advantage having this relic. Next one here is Canopic Jar of Imseti. I think this relic is misunderstood. It's not good for Berserks. It's not good for Herdmen. It's not good for Hoplites. The whole point of this relic is to help you build fortress-style infantry. So, for example, the Huskal, the Fanatic, the Myrmidon, those types of units. So if you're playing as Zeus, as Atlantean, or as Norse, and you see this relic, pick this relic up because it's going to be very nice. I don't actually think, because it only affects like a very small amount of stuff, I don't think it's like that much of a priority. But you know, if you're one of those gods, you probably move this up the tier list, especially if you're in a matchup and you want to build those units. Move this up a little step in the tier list. But I think I'm going to put this one sort of at the bottom of the resource trickle relics. But you know, if you are planning on building those Huskal or something like that, you know, move that up into the B tier and pick that up. The next one here is Chariot of Sibel. This is easily one of the best relics. You get 2 early game units, which are really, really strong for free on repeat for the entirety of the game. Obviously not that good later in the game because it doesn't take population though, so it doesn't matter, but it's not going to have any impact there. But early game, yeah, this thing is pretty much, this is one of the best relics in the game. Definitely a big one there. Getting 2 golden lions out. Okay, so the next one here is Sharon's Oval. This gives a 50% refund to you on your villager dying. So a villager is 25 food, a dwarf 30 gold. I just don't know about this one. I think the only time this relic would be useful is if you're going to town center and your opponent is going for... Oh, sorry, let me rephrase that. I think this relic is only sort of worthwhile picking up if you're going to town center and your opponent is going 1 town center pressure. And the reason for this is you have to put the effort into going and picking the relic up with the hero. It could be doing something else. And if you're playing a 1 town center game, you probably don't have the time to go over and grab that relic. So, I mean, in that one situation, I would say it's probably like looking at a D tier relic, like one of the last ones to pick up. But even then, I'm going to pop it in this don't bother thing. I think if this goes, I think there is room for this relic to go up in value and it becoming kind of a C tier relic. But at the moment, I just don't like it. I don't think it's that good. The next one here is Demeter's Throne. This one reduces your house mana cost, your resource drop site economic guilds, reducing their build time. It's got a lot of effects, but I don't care. This is as I don't care as anything. Like I don't see the point pretty much ever. Economic guild reduced by 25%. It's already dirt cheap as Gaia if you want to spam it. I don't see it. I think this is a terrible relic. Just leave it on the ground and just go. Unlucky. That one's not useful. The next one here is Dwarven Calipers. Siege weapons cost 20% less resources. For a similar reason to Archimedes' Ledger, you know, we just don't see that many siege weapons actually being built. So a 20% reduction over the course of a game, even though the siege weapons are quite expensive at around 400-ish average resources, you're really not seeing that much return for picking up this relic. Like, how many siege weapons are you going to build? Like maybe 10 in a game. If you're building more than that, they're just getting picked off and you're losing them too easily, right? It's you're kind of building them in the wrong time of the game. Again, if you're going for mass baluster, then all of a sudden it's a decent relic. So you might want to pull this up if you're Norse, but I don't know. Compared to some of the other relics, I just think this is kind of a silly one. Dwarven Horseshoes. That being said, you know, if Siege get really good and become very meta to build quite a bit of Siege, all of a sudden, Archimedes' Ledger, Dwarven Calipers, these become really, really useful relics. So it's not that their effect is actually that bad. It's more that Siege is a little bit lackluster. Okay, so the next one is Dwarven Horseshoes. This is a 10% boost to cavalry units. It is either better, I think it's better than Chariots of Sibel. I think this might be the best relic in the game. 10% boost to already fast unit. You can get yourself a 7.8 speed Camel Rider with Desert Winds and this relic. You can get yourself a 7.2 speed Raiding Cavalry with Thundering Hooves plus this relic. So this relic can be absolutely oppressive. So it's a must grab. If you're not going to go for cavalry, it doesn't matter, just to keep it away from your opponent. All right, next relic is Eye of Horus. This is +4 to population. I think this is a great relic. I'm not sure exactly where to put this. I think it's maybe a little bit below Amble of Hephaestus because the population doesn't matter as much as those armory upgrades do. But once you have the armory upgrades, then the population matters. This is definitely a late game relic. And while I don't think, because actually, let me rephrase it. This is a late game relic. And because it's maybe a late game relic, let's just put it down here, maybe below some of these other relics that are going to have a little bit more impact on most games. The fort population, you're not going to feel it until you get 3 town centers. Then all of a sudden it's 12 population. And that's like a citadel. And you'll feel that quite a lot in the late game. Or at least in the like 3 town center versus 3 town center fortified sort of situation there. So yeah, we'll put it up in this A tier. You know, the better players get and the more late games we start seeing. And maybe if you go into a boom war, yeah, this relic's great. So we'll keep going along. We've got the Eye of Ornlu next. This is counter infantry with bonus damage. Personally, I don't rate this relic that much. Counter infantry already dominate infantry, and then giving them extra damage to dominate infantry even more. It's not helping them really versus the units that they're not killing because their base damage is so low. It's just helping them kill off counter infantry even more. And I don't think there's a single counter infantry unit here that's really that bad, apart from the Caraballista. Would this help out the Caraballista? I don't know. I don't think so. This relic here, I'm just going to drop it down in this D tier, probably above these relics because it is a stat boosting relic. Stat boosting relics can be huge, but I just don't see the utility of this one at the moment. The next one here is Fetters of Fenrir. This boosts your villages by 20%. It's okay. It's not terrible. It's not a terrible relic. I would pick it up, but where do I pick it up? Villagers being able to turn around and actually fight to defend themselves, getting 20% boost when you have 6 base attack or DPS. They're actually starting to have like a decent amount of damage. What is it, 7.2? So yeah, it's not a terrible relic, but it's not a good relic either. If we continue along here to Gambantine Odin's Wand, there's a 25% reduction in temple upgrades. I love this relic because it's giving you favor, it's giving you resources back, but still it's probably not the best of relics just because there's not that many techs in your temple. So I'm going to pop it down here maybe in front of Canopic Jar of Imseti and behind Ankh of Ra. It's pretty good. It's worth picking up, especially if you got those upgrades coming in, but if your opponent picks this up, you're never going to be like, oh, damn it. It's just like, oh, well, they got that relic. Enjoy. Next one is Girdle of Hippolyta. This is increasing your hit points of the archers by 10%. This one's busted. This is like really, really good. This is better than Bow of Artemis. This is better than Anvil of Hephaestus. I don't know if it's better than Chariots of Sibel, but I'm going to go ahead and pop this one up here above Chariots of Sibel just because, like, archers are already good. Then you give them an extra 10% HP, and they're starting to feel even stronger against cavalry, which, you know, they're already kind of doing decently against cavalry. So that 10% HP is really, really nice. The next one here is Gungnir Odin's Spear. It gives 5% boost to units with spears. So that's hoplites, spearmen, herdmen, murmillos. Apparently it gives it to murmillos, even though murmillo's got a sword. But nonetheless, it might be catapulties actually, not the murmillos. Maybe the thing is wrong here. I can't remember. But nonetheless, it's a boost to the spear holding units. And hoplites are already really good. So for Zeus, amazing. For Egyptian, spearmen are probably built in should probably be built in the vast majority of matchups. So it's probably pretty good for them. The herdmen kind of are a little bit average at the moment, unless you're playing as Loki. So if you're playing as Loki and you're going to be building those, then definitely. But maybe it brings the herdmen up for everyone else into like a sort of position where they actually get some serious damage done against the cavalry. But I don't think that 5% is enough to save them really. But nonetheless, this is not an amazing relic unless you're Greek or potentially Egypt. So I'm going to pop this one sort of in this similar spot to Canopic Jar of Imseti, just because it really depends on what's going to happen, what you're building and everything else. Next one here is Harmonia's Necklace. This is a straight 10% to gold. Black Lotus, Blue Crystal Shard. I don't rate gold as heavily as farms. Though I rate the wood with gold as a very balanced thing there a little bit better. Arguably, you could say these are much of a muchness. It doesn't really matter which order these go in. They're all just basically the same in terms of their effectiveness. So while I've given a slight edge to Blue Crystal Shard here, Black Lotus, Harmonious Necklace, there's not... It's all kind of the same. The only reason Harmonious Necklace is at the back is because gold does run out, and then this relic becomes useless, right? That's the only reason. The next one here is Head of Orpheus. This is a buildings gain +8 line of sight. Not terrible, not good, not a C tier. Probably not better than Eye of Ornlu, probably better than Adamantine Shingles. It's decent. Getting line of sight is an invaluable amount of information you can get at the high levels. Line of sight is everything, so I do recommend picking that one up. At least at the last one, anyways. Hecate's Torch here with God Powers recharge faster and favor cost reduction. This really depends. Like if you're playing as Greek and you have Restoration, this is as must grab as it gets, right? It's up here in this position. If you're playing as a god that doesn't really reuse the god powers because you're spamming out myth units or you're getting all those texts, then it becomes not that great. So I don't know if this sort of nudges it down a little bit, like to maybe the A tier, maybe above Bridal of Pegasus or maybe below Bridal of Pegasus. But, you know, sometimes this is a must grab and sometimes it's an A tier relic. So it's not that different. You still want it because you want to keep it away from your opponent. But yeah, it's going to sit here. I think it's really, really good for Atlantean as well because they've already got cheap god powers. So that's going to help them out even more. As we move down to Hermes' Winged Sandals, this one makes your heroes move 10% faster. This used to be busted on Loki, but you know Loki doesn't really build that many Hersa. Could be really, really good for Thor actually, because Thor's Hersa are really, really strong. They're good, not really in terms of like damage output or anything. They're kind of sitting in like a weird spot where they're not really amazing, not really terrible. But what they're good at is raiding and generating favor. So you're getting economy for building these. So if you get this as Thor, it's really nice. For Egyptian, not that useful, not going to help you out at all. The priests are already really slow, so an extra 10% doesn't really boost them that much. Greek, it's definitely going to help because you're not getting onto those myth units and actually starting to deal damage. The faster you get to them, the better. So that's going to help, especially with like Poseidon, with the Atalanta, getting that boosted speed onto her to get out onto the map and get some harass done early is going to be huge, and sniping down myth units as well. And who else is there? I guess Atlantean have got some Mermilla heroes or Contaris heroes they're going to build to get a huge amount of speed going, but I don't rate this up at Dwarven Horseshoes level at all. I don't even... I because of how good it was in Legacy for Loki, I still have this like bias to want to put it high, but I think that it's just Legacy bias, and man, it's getting hard. This relic is actually really difficult to place. I'm going to put it in this sort of spot here, just below Hecate's Torch here, just on the fact that it's only good for some gods, not good for every god, and yeah. All right, Hestia's Hearth here is villagers reducing by 5%. On the surface, you go, wow, villager reduction, that's huge, that's awesome, is what you think. But then you actually look at the numbers and you're like, I need to build like, is it 20 villagers to get an extra villager? That's a lot of minutes that need to pass for this one to actually net you an entire extra villager. And I know that the math would say you get a little bit of extra resources, 5%. Let's just say it's 1 second. It's not, but let's say it's 1 second faster training time. Maybe it is 1 second faster training time. It's not quite, right? But anyways, let's say it's 1 second extra faster training time. Then every villager comes out 1 second faster, which means every villager is getting the extra gather time. It's not just 1 second. It's 1 second, then 2 seconds, then 3 seconds, 4 seconds, all the way up to the completely new villager, right? Of extra gather time. So it is good, but is it better than one of these trickle relics? I don't actually know. Probably better than a trickle relic. Someone has to do the math for me. Roast me in the comments. This is a gut feeling. Once we get to the once we get to the actual trickle relics, I'll do some quick math on that for you guys and figure out exactly what is going on there. I can't remember what they actually give you. So, but yeah, I think it might be on paper better, but trickle is just better no matter what. It just keeps coming in. So I don't know. Next one is Cathar of Apollo. This relic here is sort of similar to Fetters of Fenrir. It's in the fact that it's going to keep you alive. That's why you want this. It's not really for anything else. It doesn't boost your economy that much. If you've got like some walking time on wood lines, for example, or walking time between resources, sure, it gets you a little bit of help there. But in reality, this relic is just to keep your villagers alive or potentially rushing into a side build situation. It's definitely not an important relic to pick up, but where in this position, I'm going to go ahead and say it's above Head of Orpheus. While Head of Orpheus, you can actually no, it's not. Head of Orpheus is better because you're going to be able to see stuff and react to it quicker, right? If you see the unit coming through, you can start running the villages earlier. If you have Cathar of Apollo, you see the army coming in to raid you a little bit later, and then you run and you're going to be able to get away, but you're going to be reacting a little bit later. So, yeah, there's that. All right, next one is Nose of the Sphinx. This is 15% more hit points for your buildings. Again, this is similar to Blanket of Empress, so it doesn't really save you against much. Maybe as Norse, it's better because it will actually start saving you against stuff like Meteor. It's better than Adamantine Shingles because it affects everything. So I'm just going to put it down here. I don't value this that much. It's probably pretty good in the late game, but yeah, I just don't. I don't mind this one. Oseberg Wagon used to be a must-grab relic in Legacy, but in Retold, trading is not something that happens all too often. So is this a must-grab? Can you go into a very specific trade strategy and make this work? Not really. I don't think it gives you enough of a boost to like make that happen. So it's like, pick this relic up, go for early trade, enjoy. No, not really. So I'm going to pop this one. It's still like decent. It's still like an economic relic, but it's like sitting sort of in this Black Lotus range at the moment is my guess. It does give you resources back, caravans being cheaper. Does make the caravans faster by 10%. So I'll put it above Black Lotus. No, I can't put it above Black Lotus. Black Lotus affects every single game. I can't put it above Harmonious Necklace. Harmonious Necklace affects every single game. Oseberg Wagon at the bottom of this list, but if you are playing a matchup you think is going to go late game, all of a sudden it does become very, very good. So I'll put it up there for that if you have that in the back of your mind. All right, Pandora's Box is next. Myth units cost 20% less favor. Personally, I love this relic. I think this relic is really good. I'm going to pop it up here above Anvil of Hephaestus. This relic's really good because it's like favor is somewhat of a finite resource for some gods. And for other gods, while you can get more favor, it costs more to build it, to get that favor. Like just if you want favor faster, it costs more to get it. So for example, as Atlantean, you have to build more oracles. If as Greek, you need to put more villages on temple. Even as Norse, you have to fight more. You need to put more Hersa. So, yeah, this relic is awesome. This makes you be able to spam out myth units much better, and it can be very, very strong. All right, the next one here is Pelt of Argus. This is all units gaining 6 line of sight. Unlike Head of Orpheus, on the units, I've never really saw this as a very useful relic, with the exception of very blind units, like the Hippias, right? It's doesn't have much line of sight. So I don't rate this relic very highly. I'm going to actually pop this down in probably the bottom of D tier. I might be underrating this relic, but for your actual units, most of them have got enough line of sight. That +6 probably not going to help you that much. There's going to be moments where a +6 line of sight is going to be the difference between you spotting an enemy army and not, but nonetheless, that's what I think. So it is that. All right, so Dark Scepter coming in next. This is reducing your farm cost by 25%. So to do some very quick math here, let's say we build 40 farms. Let's say they cost 75 wood. Let's say we divide that by 25. All of a sudden, we're getting 100 and... No, that's not right. That's not right. I times it by 0.25. My brain not working. So you get 750 resources if you build 40 farms. 40 farms is a lot. Probably the average is probably going to be somewhere between 25 and 40, somewhere between there. So maybe like 30 farms is a good guesstimate. But on the very top end here, building 40 farms, Not as good as Anvil for Feisters, but still pretty good. I'm going to put this one at the top of the B tier until I sort of work out how much these actually give me, how much resources these actually give me. All right, next one is Pygmalion Statue. Now, this one here is better than Cathar of Apollo, is better than Fetters of Fenrir. This is a huge relic in my opinion because it really helps you keep your villagers alive. And I'm going to actually put this one maybe up here in above these economic relics because keeping a villager alive can be much more worth it than one of these economic upgrades. Say you've got 10 villagers on wood, but you lose a villager, all of a sudden the villager having been alive will give you more resources if you can keep them. And you're obviously going to get quite a few alive with this relic because it's just more HP on the villagers. All right, and the next one here is Rhea's Crown, which gives your town centers a reduced rate and also gives you 0.01 favor per second on each of the town centers. So in total, 0.03 favor a second, which is a third of a monument or a third of a villager gathering favor is Greek. So it's not that big. 10% off a town center is like 75 resources, so it's not that important. But if you are going for a fast second town center or fast 3 town centers, you can pick this one up and it's pretty good. I would say this one's sitting at the it's probably not as good as any of these sort of upgrades here. Probably I just don't like this relic, so I'm going to put it in C tier here at the bottom of C tier for the moment. The next one here, here we go. We've got Ring of Nibelung. Okay, so it gives you 30 gold a minute. So in 10 minutes, you get 300 gold. This is giving you 700, right? So yeah, I think Dark Scepter is much better. I'm going to start putting these relics in here. I think this is where they belong. 30 gold a minute. Pretty good. Not terrible. Not going to be a big game-changing relic, but definitely picking it up is going to help you out. Okay, Scales of Catoplapas is next. This one, I kind of feel like is a little bit misunderstood. It's pretty decent. 15% reduction against pierce damage. That's okay. So what do you want to do? What do you want to use this for? Effectively, if your opponent has got ranged myth units or ranged heroes, that's what it's good against. So Godi, the Greek hero in the Third Age, and any sort of Terma shenanigans, right? Or Arcus shenanigans. So it's actually pretty good. Not good against Egyptian because they got true damage, but good against everything else. So I don't think it's like an amazing relic unless you're spamming myth units, but say you get Pandora's Box and Scales of Catoplapas, why not? Why not? Let's pop this one. I think it's probably sitting at about above this Eye of Ornlu. It's a stat boost, but I would prefer this one, I think, over Eye of Ornlu. All right, the next one here is Scales of Echidna. This makes your myth units cheaper. It doesn't make the favor go down, so it's not Pandora's Box level of good, but myth units being cheaper is very, very impactful. At least it feels like it's impactful. So let's say I am making Minotaur. Minotaur cost 180 gold. So we take off 15% of that, and you're left with 27 gold off. So let's say we build 10 of those. That's 270. I mean, I guess at the max here, it's not going to be quite as good as these relics. So as sad as it is to say after doing the math, we'll put it down here. It's probably worse than Gambantine Odin's Wand. Oh, no, I don't think it is. I really don't know. I'm going to put it above Gambantine Odin's Wand. Obviously, like you can choose when to get the Minotaur or choose what myth units you're going to be getting out, and you will be building quite a few of them throughout the game, I would assume. Most people will. So yeah, I still think it's a must-grab relic, but above these resource ones, I don't think so. Okay, next one is Ship of Fingernails. This is going to be your 30 food a minute, which is the same as Ring of Nibelung, but gold is more important than food. So we put that there. System of Bast makes your villages cheaper. And you can think about this very simply. It's 10% off food. So every 15 seconds, you get back 5 food. So every minute, you get back 20 food. So it's 20 food a minute. Or it's 40 food a minute if you've got 2 town centers. Or it's 60 food a minute. But then it erases itself and you get full food. So is it it is probably fine. Resources stop mattering at that point because you got full income. So I'm going to put it above these ones just on the fact that get System of Bast, get 2 town centers. It's better than Ship of Fingernails. Wreck of Nibelung might actually be better than it, though this also does affect dwarves as well. And I think it has to be up here. Okay, the next one is Skulls of Serapis. This one here, I rate this one a little bit higher than Chariot of Sibel. This one here gives you 5 or 6 relic monkeys. That's 6 units that you can use to scout. That's 6 units you can use to harass. That's 6 units you can use to defend in the early game. And it can allow you to do things that you otherwise shouldn't be allowed to do. Effectively, that's it. Okay, next one is Staff of Dionysus. We've got villagers regenerating at 0.5 hit points per second. The only usage for this that I can think of that it's going to be useful for is in, say, a Norse Mirror, where you are playing aggressive on your hunt, aggressively defending your hunt, and you bring your villagers into the fight to start shanking. And I guess it'll work for other sort of gold staff situations. So any sort of civ that's in a gold staff situation, they've got your army on the gold mine, your opponent comes in, you bring your army in, take a fight, they retreat back, your units are damaged, and the Staff of Dionysus will get them back up to full HP. But that being said, it's not as good as Pygmalion Statue because this actually keeps them alive. And I mean, Fetters of Fenrir is doing a similar sort of situation there and assisting in that situation. So is it better than Fetters of Fenrir? Probably. Probably slightly. So we'll put it here. Next one, Svadilfari's Sledge. Make sure favor costs go away on the fortress. I know favor is only like, well, every fortress you build is like 100 quote unquote resources back with 10 favor off. If you build 10 fortresses, that's 1,000 resources. You can probably build that many very simply. But because favor is a finite resource, this does get a little bit more edge for me. It's not quite as good as Anvil for Phaistos. Dar's Scepter, it's probably better than Dar's Scepter. So I'm going to pop this one just above this one here for me. Just because I value the favor a little bit more than I value that wood. Or gold from Dar's Scepter there. Okay, so Tale of Cerberus is next. This makes Myth units charge ability time reduced by 25%. This is really, really useful. I think people would maybe underestimate how good this is because, say, Minotaur extra specials, Cyclops extra specials, Centaur extra specials, Anubite extra specials. The list goes on, right? It's just good. Like it just is. It's more damage. So if you find this relic, don't feel afraid to go into a mass myth unit strategy and make this happen with some of those special ability type myth units. Where does it go though is the big question. Now we're getting into this area where I'm really not sure. I'm not sure if it goes up into this level up here, but I think it might. I'm going to pop this one up here. Just because I think Armor of Achilles and Arrows of Heracles are a little bit better, but I think this is better than economic upgrades for the most part. Next one here is Text of Imhotep. This is a 10% building reduction time. I don't know where to put this one. It's not a don't bother relic. It's not a good relic. It's somewhere in the middle. It's probably not better than the resource trickle relics. So it's probably better than Rhea's Crown because it's going to make that town center complete faster, which is going to be resources back. Plus it makes everything else build faster as well. So that's also resources off on the actual cost of the building. All right. I don't really know though. This is a head scratcher. I'm not confident with that spot. You guys can roast me in the comment section. Next one is Kopesh of Horus. This is going to make your heroes get an extra 1 damage or 1x damage versus myth units. This relic is huge. It's up here in this top position as well. I don't know if it's quite up here with Dwarven Horseshoes of Girl of Hippolyta, but I'm going to put it here below Pandora's Box, just on the fact that I prefer the myth units. If this relic is on the map, you would probably get this relic first and then get Pandora's Box. But, if it's not there, then getting more myth units is obviously going to be nice. Next one here is Scarab Pendant. This is just bonus for your siege weapons. I think this is better than these two because it actually does make your siege more effective. But again, this is probably, maybe I'll put this above these ones for the time being. It's dealing more damage to buildings. I'm going to put it here. I don't know. I don't think it's amazing. I don't think it's going to change any games. I don't think it's just there to give you a little boost to your siege. So not bad. Okay. Titan's Treasure here is making your age ups 25% cheaper. This is It's not that many resources. Very rarely will you get this before advancing to the classical age. That's only 40 resources. Anyways, is it 40 resources? 25% cheaper. So 400 times 0.25. 100 resources. Wait, really? Oh, it's minus 10%. I'm dumb. So I'm right. 40. I was right. 40 off. I read the old Secrets of the Titans relic was 25% off. This is 10% off. So you get 130 off the heroic age, and you get 200 off the mythic age. It's not that much of an assistance here, in all honesty. It's probably similar to Gambantine Odin's Wand in terms of actual helpfulness. So we'll put it below this. So there you go. Thundercloud Shawl is Pierce vulnerability going down. And I'm going to put this right next to Arrows of Achilles. I think it's just as good. Obviously against Norse, not very helpful, but this is affecting every single unit. So I'm going to put it above the infantry. Very simple. I just value that. Next one is Tower of Cestus. This makes sure towers have 40% bonus attack versus myth units. Wow, wow. This is kind of useless, unfortunately. If this affected every building, I would say, okay, it's starting to be decent, but I don't even think if the towers get like, if you get this relic and you get Arrows of the Alpha, I still don't think the towers are getting good damage versus a myth unit. Myth unit's just got high pierce armor. So these things they're going to tickle. So I won't even bother. Next one is Trojan Gate Hinge. We'll also have 20% more hit points. Similar sort of stuff to Nose of the Sphinx. It's not as good as Nose of the Sphinx either. I mean, slightly better than Nose of the Sphinx at affecting walls. But I'm going to put this below Adamantine Shingles. I'm going to put this below Blanket of Emperor. So I'm just going to leave it here. Now we get into some pretty stonking relics. Tusk of the Iron Boar is sitting up here with Dwarven Horseshoes, plus 10% on Cavalry. That's really good. Next one here is Tearfang Agantir's Sword. What happened there? Oh, hello. Okay. Let's talk about this a little bit more. So 10%. Why is 10% on a cavalry unit HP so much better than say 10% HP on an archer? I mean, it is and it's not. I mean, they're right next to each other. But why is this one above this one? Well, all cavalry have got really high base armor, base HP. So more base HP. That's huge. An extra 10%. So a Hippias is like at 150. So you get an extra 15 HP per Hippias. Versus a Toxotes, which is like 60 HP, you're getting 6 extra HP. So you see the difference? It's huge. All right, Tearfang Agantir's Sword. I hate to say it. This relic is underwhelming in more ways than one. You think that your hero is going to get a huge amount of HP back. It's 10% lifesteal for your heroes. You think your hero is going to get a huge amount of HP back, but in the end, even if you're hitting a myth unit, let's take a Herser, for example, hitting an Anubite. I worked it out the other day. It's doing like 20 in a classical age. It's doing like 20 DPS. That's 2 HP back per attack. And that's when it's attacking the right unit. It's just not enough for it to be worthwhile in the slightest. It's definitely in this D tier. It's below Eye of Ornu. I reckon it's below a lot of these relics. In fact, I don't even know. Maybe I'm going to pop this into Don't Bother for the moment. I just don't see the point. And maybe with, no, even if you're flaming weapons with like Herser, with Loki, I just don't see it. The last one here is Ulla's Boat, which is going to make your archers have an extra range and line of sight to make up for extra range. This is getting into that area of breaking the game. And thus far, it is going to come up here above Girdle for Polita. An extra range is just better. If you get yourself a Chariot Archer at 21 range, all of a sudden, it's now hard countering, say, a Heavy Slinger at, 18 range, 17 range? I can't remember. But nonetheless, like the more range an archer has, the more you can space an enemy. It's just a really, really good relic. Anyways, that's what I got for today. I don't know how much you guys are going to agree with me or not, but nonetheless, this is my tier list. If you guys enjoyed this one, please consider the follow on the Twitch. If you're on the YouTube, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys in the next game.